How's it going, guys? Matt with Motorworks here. Okay, before you start tearing into this thing, you should have at least a decent collection of tools. A couple of extra things that I have hose clamp pliers. I went out and bought those. That's pretty much the only extra thing I have that's not 100% necessary. These definitely are. These are transmission line pullers, fuel line pullers. Various components use special clip type connections where they press on, they clip on, and the only way really to release them is to get these special pullers. Now they sell these in sets at any auto parts store or Harbor Freight. They're very inexpensive, but you definitely need this because you have to use this blue one here to pull off the fuel line. So definitely need this. And just an assortment of hand tools. These are all the tools I use to take this much stuff off. So cylinder heads are off, exhaust off, intake manifold. A lot of this stuff was like 10 millimeter, 12 millimeter, 15 millimeter. You know, just an assortment of that, you know, using wrenches and sockets, but not a very big variety of fasteners, you know, like I said, 10s, 12s, 15s, and this thing came apart pretty easy, pretty quickly too. So you need at least a pretty decent tool set to get this job done. And we're starting to tear down on the Chrysler today. That's right, we're taking I'm gonna try to get the whole engine disassembled down to, you know, just getting everything off the car. I want to get all that done today. I want to get it all done in one day. So a lot of this is going to be time-lapse stuff. I'll pause and take breaks. Again, this isn't really a how-to video. There'll be some how-to info and some stuff that I'm figuring out, but I'm kind of learning how to do this as I go. So not really the best source to get the information, but I feel I am a good source for some of those that are trying to tackle this job themselves. And one of the first things I always tell people is have a cell phone or have a digital camera, or even any type of camera will work. Even if you have a Polaroid where you snap a photo and you pull the photo out. Just get pictures of anything and everything. You know what I mean? Go around and just take pictures. And really all you're doing is you're just getting an idea of how, you know, wires are routed, how hoses are routed. You know, this, when you're looking at it right now, looks simple to some people, but when you go to put it back together, you don't know if that wire ran under something or over something. So this is a good way, you know, to just know where that stuff goes. You just look back at the photograph you took. I mean, cameras nowadays are amazing, especially on a cell phone. So you should have no problem, as long as you snap a lot of photos, figuring out where everything goes when you put it back together. All right, back here in the trunk. The reason we're back here is we're going to be disconnecting the battery. And if you didn't know, the battery for the 300 is in the trunk here on the right hand side. And it's just I believe it's an 8 millimeter, or should be 8 millimeter socket. I probably should have grabbed the deep well socket, but I believe, actually I lied, it's a 10 millimeter. Okay, scratch that. It's a 10 millimeter socket, and it looks like this shallow socket's good. Now the only terminal you really have to loosen and take off is the negative terminal. Now one thing to bear in mind, when you do take and unhook the battery, you are no longer able to access the trunk without going through the back seat, because the trunk is electronically opened, and that is the only way you open the trunk. So just keep that in mind when you disconnect the battery, that the only way you're getting in the trunk is through the back seat, so don't pile a bunch of stuff in front of it. Now, speaking of piling stuff in, any of the protective coverings, air box, things that aren't going to be covered in oil, you can just set that stuff back in a trunk. It's a good place to keep it. Like I'm going to be putting the ignition coils in here, and anything that doesn't have oil on it is going to get put in the trunk here. So as I take it apart, I'm going to pop it in the trunk, and when I'm all done, I'll shut the trunk. But again, just bear in mind, the only way to get the trunk back open is to go through the seat. So leave yourself a little pathway to get to your trunk release back here. So battery is disconnected. We're good to go. We're not going to electrocute ourselves. And again, I almost shut the trunk on myself there. So just remember, keep it open when you're putting stuff in there. And now I'm going to start disconnecting big items. So what I'm going to be taking off: airbox, ignition coils. I'm also going to go under the car, and I'm going to disconnect the headers. And while I'm under there, I'm also going to drain the coolant out of the radiator, because we are going to have to remove the radiator. So I am going to drain the coolant at that time as well. So this is why you want to get a mechanic that you trust, because I just took this whole car apart using a 10mm socket and an 8mm socket, and I've gotten it down this far here. You know, anybody could do this. Mechanics isn't difficult when it comes to taking an engine apart. It's literally, you just have to understand lefty loosey, righty tighty for most cases on bolts and fasteners. So coils are off, airbox is out. You know, it looks like I actually know what I'm doing. At this point, you'd be like, oh, that's a good mechanic there. He's got it this far. That's awesome. But I assure you that this does not mean anything. This just means that I know how to take bolts out. But it's all stripped down. Next thing I'm going to do is, like I said, head under the car. I'm going to loosen I'm actually going to remove the bolts that are securing the long tube headers to the mid pipes. And then we're going to drain the coolant out of the radiator. This could take a while, but I'm just going to remove these bolts here. And I'm only going to drain the radiator at this point. I want to leave the oil in the engine until I'm all done. Then I'll do an oil change on it, because when you do this job and you pull the cylinder heads off to get access to the lifters, all that coolant that's sitting underneath the cylinder head and that flows through the cylinder head, all that coolant is going to fill up the engine. So what I'll let it do then is just kind of settle, and the coolant will settle underneath the oil. So when I go to drain the oil out of this, all the oil will be sitting on top of the coolant, and hopefully it'll push all the coolant out of the engine, and then it'll get a good flush because the oil will be sitting on top of it. And if you do it the other way, I mean, you're still going to have to deal with coolant coming out. You're still going to have to drain your oil anyway. So might as well do that and hopefully get a bigger majority of the coolant out. But I'm going to struggle through removing these, and then we'll drain the coolant. Alrighty, so I'm draining the radiator now. It didn't come out of the little drain hose like it's supposed to. There's a valve in there. I just loosened it about a half turn, and it's just leaking antifreeze everywhere. So got a nice 5-gallon bucket. It should catch a large majority of antifreeze. I also, once that's done draining, I have a big metal drip pan, because when you start to remove these heads, there's still a bunch of antifreeze that's in the cylinder heads. It doesn't all drain out just because you drain the radiator. So I got a big drip pan. It's going to catch a large majority of that stuff, but I'm going to let that thing drain a while, and I'm going to start removing things like radiator hoses. I'm probably not even going to take the hose off. Probably just take the water neck off of the thermostat there, and then just remove that. And then I'm going to remove the coolant fans. I think I have to take off the bumper, and I'm not 100% sure on that. I might not have to, but I do have to take the cooling fans off. I have to take serpentine belt off. And then anything that's attached to this timing cover back here, I'm also going to have to remove. So that and the cylinder head too. So it looks like the power steering pump is attached to the cylinder head. The alternator is attached to the timing cover. I might even have to remove the air conditioner or the condenser. So there's a bunch of things that need to be removed. We're going to start removing that stuff now and see where we get. Alrighty, serpentine belt is off, fans out. I still have to remove the radiator because the only way I'm going to be able to get the camshaft out is with that radiator out of the way, as well as the condenser just moved down in a way, down far enough that I can actually sneak the camshaft out of there. But we're kind of a long way from that. I still want to remove the cylinder heads before I even think about taking this timing cover off. But I did notice something. If you look, these intake ports are pretty dirty. And let me go show you over here. Now, if you look at the intake manifold gasket, it's a steel gasket, but there's this rubber insert in here, which is actually what helps keep a majority of the dirt and filth out here. And on one cylinder, it still has this beautiful silicone / rubber gasket in place. But on all the rest of the cylinders, she gone. They got sucked into the engine at some point. And the story continues on the other side. So this one's completely sucked in. That one's still there, kind of. This one's gone. So I imagine I had a slight intake manifold leak on this. Not enough to throw any type of check engine light, but definitely had some leakage going on in there. And it looks like it was okay for, like, in between here where I bet the oil drains down through on here. I don't want to break anything here. It looks like, yeah, where the oil drained down through there, that was still sealed up nice and tight. But yeah, you could definitely tell what wasn't sealed and what was sealed. So we're gonna have to look at the cylinder walls and see how scored they are, because that was just sucking a bunch of crud in there and also leaking out a bunch of unburned fuel. So first thing I noticed while tearing this apart, and I think that's why they recommend you go with those kinetic gaskets, because they don't do this. So I guess we're going to fix that issue. Got a lot of cleaning up to do on the intake itself. It's pretty filthy in there, so I'm going to be cleaning that stuff up. But figure I'd show you guys that. But back at the car, next thing we're going to do is remove the cylinder heads. Now I should be able to sneak the cylinder heads out with the long tube headers still attached to them. I'm not 100%, but from everything I've seen, it shouldn't be an issue and they should sneak out of there just fine. But yeah, we're moving right along. It's actually been pretty trouble-free, pretty easy. Nothing, no major snags so far. I definitely want to get some type of paint to just put a fresh coat of orange on there while this is apart. Clean it up really good, scuff it up, get a fresh coat of orange, at least on the top, and then at some point I can get the rest of it. But yeah, it's looking cruddy. Same thing with these water pipes here. I'm going to inspect these really good. If they still look like they're in good shape, I'll just sand them down and put a fresh coat of black paint on them to prevent that rust from going any further. But yeah, it's looking good.
Fingers.
Well, I cut myself. I usually leave my mark on the engines when I work on them. That's what I did.
Let me see.
I just cut myself. I got a boo-boo.
Why don't you need a band-aid?
All right, are you ready, dude? You gonna listen? We're gonna hear all the coolant and everything just dump out of this thing. Got my drip pan under there. It's gonna make a mess. Here goes. You listening? Oh, it's heavy. Did you hear it?
Yeah, that scared me, Dad.
All right, now I gotta get a good grip on this thing and lift it off. Oh man, that's heavy.
And there's green water like in our pool. There's green water in our pool.
There better not be green water in our pool.
Yes, there is, and there's green water in here like our pool.
Oh my.
That went all through your stuff. It made a big pipe down there of your car. It made it pipe.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, it made your pipe wet.
Oh man.
How is there that much water in there?
There's a lot of water in there, dude. Should have taken the O2 sensor out. Being a bugger. Yowzer. Oh, that's heavy.
Does it weigh as much as me?
Oh, probably.
Dad, look at the bottom.
I see all that green water in there.
How do you see?
There's a bunch of green water in here I gotta get out.
Ooh, that will make a mess too.
Yes, it will.
How big of a mess? Bigger than the other one?
About the same.
Well, I want to see it. Get the other leaker out.
So all that antifreeze went down in there beautifully. Pistons still look good. At least on this side here. Clean them up. So everything still looks good over here. I don't know about cross hatching yet. I'll have to look down and see if it is still cross hatching in the cylinders, but whoo-wee, that was heavy. Head gasket looks like it was doing its job. Now the next thing I got to pull out are the lifters.
Yeah.
And we'll just keep track of where they're at. So yeah, just keep plugging away on this thing.
Dad.
So far everything's going pretty smoothly. Hold on, bud. Everything's going pretty smoothly on this thing, so keep taking stuff apart. Alrighty, I am going to be making a mental note for myself as well as you guys. So back here on the back of the cylinder heads, the water pipes that go to the, what do you call it, the heater core, they bolt to the back of the cylinder heads back here. And you don't forget that there are ground wires that also attach to that stud slash bolt. So that's a mental note to myself for reassembly. And The map sensor, that was difficult to get to on the back of the intake manifold there. I ended up unbolting it because I couldn't unplug it. So instead of breaking the plug, I just unbolted it. I'm going to unplug it, and then I'm going to bolt it back onto the intake manifold and then plug it back in. That'll be the easiest. I unhooked the, can't see it in there real well, but I unhooked the brake booster from the actual brake booster. That plumbs to the back of the cylinder, or the back of the intake manifold. So that's still all hooked up. It's easier just to unhook it from the brake booster, I found. And then, yeah, I'm just about to loosen this cylinder head up here. I took the alternator off, give me more clearance, and that way I could unplug it and move these wires more to get them out of the way. But we're about ready to crack this sucker loose and take this cylinder head off. And then I think we're gonna call it a night, because I'm running out of daylight, as you can see. And I really wanna, you know, focus on this timing cover, getting the radiator out, and I'm gonna probably do all that early in the morning tomorrow. But for now, I'm gonna crack this head off and we're gonna take that one off. Alrighty, everything is off. I kind of labeled what's what, you know, passenger side, driver side, kind of as you're sitting in the car. It's kind of how I laid everything out. You know, this is the driver side, and this is the passenger side head. Had to think about that for a second. The only thing that I've noticed, and this has been kind of ongoing with this, is the number 6 cylinder. For whatever reason, the spark plug for the number 6 cylinder always gets caked. And I don't know if it's because it's burning oil, if it's got a bad injector, but it's just that number 6 cylinder. And I didn't see anything on the head gasket. I'm going to do a closer inspection of the head, but nothing appears to be leaking. But yeah, that number 6 cylinder, it's just those spark plugs get a little funky. And I'm thinking it's probably oil consumption, so more than likely maybe something's going on with the piston rings. I'm gonna take the injectors out and I'm gonna have them clean this week, just to make sure. I'm gonna have them flow tested first, just to see if any of them are flowing worse than any other ones, and then I'm gonna have them cleaned at the same time. But yeah, just that number 6, and it's the only cylinder that's giving issue. So I don't know, we'll see. I didn't see anything, but you know, we'll see. So all this stuff's off. Everything looks good. I was spinning the rollers on all the lifters. They all seem to be in good shape so far. I'm going to look at the cam and see if it's pitted. That's going to be tomorrow's job. It's you know, too late tonight, but that's going to be tomorrow's job. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the camshaft out, put the new camshaft in, put the new lifters in, and then I'm going to clean everything up, install the new springs, and just go through this stuff, make sure it's all pretty, shiny, new looking. And then I'm going to put this stuff on. Hopefully by the middle of the week, I'm bolting everything down and torquing everything up, because I'd like to have this done by Wednesday. It's Saturday night now, so tomorrow being Sunday, I want to get the new camshaft in, the new lifters in, and then clean this stuff up, and then have it all buttoned up by at least Wednesday. But guys, that is going to do it for tonight. I think we made some pretty decent progress on this, and tomorrow's another day, so I'm going to hurry up, get this video edited, get it out to you guys, and then I'm going to start wrenching tomorrow. And hopefully I get everything I want to get accomplished tomorrow, and just keep plugging away at it. But good progress tonight. I'm very happy. So, hey, thanks for checking out the video, guys. As always, like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next upload. I'm Matt. This is MotoWorks.